wind cutting like razors, and a red bike sprawled in the gravel again. Francesco Bagnaia's boots were in a fan's hands before the cameras even cooled. The world saw a rider giving away his shoes. Only a few noticed he was also giving away his patience. Ducati's double world champion was bleeding pride, not petrol. 4 crashes in 5 weekends. From a man who once wrote poetry on corner entries, the GP25 now reads like static on a dying radio. Everyone has a theory. Engine maps, front-end chatter, karma, aliens, but no one has a solution. The same people who called him the architect of Ducati's dominance now whisper he's replaceable. That's modern MotoGP for you. Yesterday's genius becomes today's problem file. The headlines scream Pecco crisis. What they miss is that the crisis sits inside Ducati itself, where Marc Márquez's arrival didn't just shake the box, it detonated the hierarchy. Pecco's data, his braking traces, his corner angles, once the gospel, are now treated like outdated scripture. Gigi wants evolution at gunpoint. Tardozzi wants results. Márquez wants victory or flames. Pecco? He wants a bike that listens. But what happens when the factory stops listening to its own champion? Comment below, because this one cuts through the myth of Italian loyalty. It began not in Australia, but months earlier, in Sepang's humid February air. Bagnaia rolled out of pit lane expecting refinement on the machine he'd built through 4 ruthless years. Instead, he found a GP25 that behaved like a stranger wearing his leathers. The rear squatted differently, the corner entry felt blind, the front end talked in riddles. He told them immediately, the bike's geometry is too nervous, it needs calmer weight transfer. Ducati smiled, took notes, and pushed another test run. The engineers were busy preparing Márquez's feedback channel, because the incoming superstar needed space. That space had turned into a political trench. Pecco was still the official #1, but inside the box, the center of gravity had shifted. Marc's data flashes lit up on every engineer's screen like sacred text. The whispers began. Márquez can stop 3 meters later. Why can't Pecco? The irony was bitter. Bagnaia's disciplined braking was why Ducati had conquered the grid. He didn't ride with madness, he rode with mathematics. Then came Japan. For 1 weekend, the world forgot the cracks. Perfect pace, clinical double win. Everyone declared the champion reborn. Ducati PR blasted it as proof of synergy. But inside, Gigi's patience was thin. He wanted that level everywhere, ignoring that the GP25 was still half-baked. Pecco's calm tone during debriefs, his insistence on data instead of emotion, was mistaken for complacency. By the time the paddock reached Phillip Island, tension hummed louder than the engines. Media circling, teammates thriving, Márquez's points gap doubling like a public humiliation chart. Bagnaia had stopped smiling in briefings. His circle shrank. He was no longer racing rivals. He was racing perception. Could any rider survive that atmosphere? Who wins a war when your own command doubts your map? Comment your verdict before we roll into the battlefield. The island looked innocent enough. Pale sky, cold asphalt, and that merciless ocean breathing beyond turn 1. Bagnaia launched from the grid wearing number 63, but with race gods already conspiring. Due to a 3-place grid penalty he'd incurred in Q2 for impeding another rider, he would start further back than his pace deserved. Crash.net. He slotted near the front, behind the likes of Raul Fernandez and Di Giannantonio. For a handful of laps, the rhythm returned. Smooth arcs, brake fade controlled, traction dancing in sync. Then the GP25 began whispering chaos. The front tire temperature dropped half a degree. The steering response twitched. He felt it instantly. That's the thing about champions. They don't need telemetry to sense betrayal. By lap 8, the Ducati started running wide on corner entry, the front refusing to bite. He backed off to survive. The commentators called it lack of aggression. In truth, it was mechanical self-preservation disguised as hesitation. Meanwhile, Di Giannantonio, riding the GP25 and apparently in better tune with its jagged edges, was charging. He proved more competitive, coming into contention where Bagnaia could not. The cameras loved it. Gigi did not. Every onboard shot of Bagnaia struggling was another nail hammered into his credibility. Lap 14. Crosswinds sharpened. Bagnaia went for throttle slightly earlier at Luque heights, felt a rear slip that shouldn't exist, corrected, over-rotated, and the front folded. Crash. The red machine skidded like a wounded animal, gravel fireworks behind it. Silence on the comms. He stood up, checked the bike, tried to remount. It wasn't defiance, it was desperation to finish, to show the world he wasn't quitting. Then he did something almost nobody noticed, took off his boots, handed them to a fan, a gesture of exhaustion masquerading as kindness. A message, I've given everything, take what's left. In the pits, the reaction split. Márquez glanced once, emotionless. Gigi shook his head. Tardozzi mumbled about unacceptable performance. The same words used in corporate layoffs, not racing. Ducati's engineers stared at the data screens, pretending to analyze. But what do you analyze when the soldier in the tank refuses to drive? Out there, Raúl Fernández won his first race. Di Giannantonio stood on the podium with Ducati's pride intact. And Bagnaia's name disappeared from the timing sheet. Another DNF lost under corporate silence. Can you call that racing, or is it psychological vivisection televised on Sundays? After Australia, the storm inside Bologna grew fangs. Pecco dropped out of the championship top 3 for the first time since 2022. His points were nearly halved compared with Márquez's relentless march. The gossip factory ignited. Maybe he's lost it. Maybe Ducati should look at Martin again. Maybe Pecco's time is over. The word maybe is poison in MotoGP. It means sponsors twitching, mechanics hedging bets, journalists sharpening knives. Bagnaia knew the headlines before he landed in Italy. The same microphones that praised his intelligence now asked if he was mentally broken. He answered with that calm monotone. We must understand what happened, but even he sounded unconvinced. What broke him wasn't the crash, it was the loss of agency. Since 2021, his feedback had been the compass for every Ducati in the field, the GP23, GP24, all refined from his fingerprints. When other riders talked setup, they compared to Bagnaia's base. He was the blueprint. Now Gigi was openly instructing riders to study Márquez's telemetry. That's not engineering, that's betrayal wrapped in corporate politeness. You can't feed a rider someone else's DNA and expect harmony. Márquez brakes as if gravity owes him a refund. His bike setup is a kamikaze equation. Shorter wheelbase, violent transfer, razor front tire load. Pecco's rhythm depends on flow, precision, grace. Force him into Marc's chaos and you amputate his identity. Inside Ducati, the civil war was obvious. One camp still believed in Pecco's methodical discipline. Another worshipped Márquez's raw hysteria. Gigi didn't hide his preference. He loved madness that wins. Tardozzi tried to play diplomat but failed. And Pecco, who'd carried the brand through Martin's rebellion and Bezzecchi's rise, now sat isolated in a corner of his own castle. Every race debrief turned into interrogation. Why can Diggia adapt and not you? Why can't you exploit the GP25's new aero? Why are you braking earlier? Because the bike forces him to. Because its new center of mass punishes precision. Because you can't dance ballet on a tank that wants demolition derby. But logic doesn't trend on social media. Conspiracies do. Fans split in two, one side defending Pecco as a victim of Ducati's obsession with Márquez, the other calling him mentally soft. No middle ground. Every slow sector time became clickbait. Every mistake was evidence. Still, he showed up to every Thursday presser, smile thin but steady, answering politely while his team dissected him in private. He's trying to hold dignity in a sport that treats emotion like weakness. Tell me, what would you do if your own creation turned on you? Would you still wear red or walk away before they hang you in the press room? Let's strip away the drama and look coldly at the data. Since the tie opener, Bagnaia's race finishes read like a heart monitor gone wrong. DNF, P7, P3, DNF, P2, P1, DNF. Contrast that with Márquez. Podiums in 80% of starts, double points in every sprint, total aggression. On paper, it looks like Pecco forgot how to ride. In reality, he's wrestling a concept bike that suits one alien and tortures everyone else. Telemetry from the GP25 shows front-end load peaking 4 to 6% higher on Márquez's runs with earlier deceleration spikes, meaning Marc forces the fork to its limit, then releases instantly. Pecco's older rhythm spreads the load smoothly, preserving tires but demanding feedback. The new bike hides that feedback behind aerodynamics, so he's effectively blindfolded at 300 kilometers per hour. This isn't incompetence, it's physics sabotaging psychology. Ducati's mistake was assuming that one man's insanity could be a development shortcut. Márquez's inputs rewrite limits, but they can't define them for everyone. The engineers fell in love with spectacle and forgot sustainability. The cruelest irony? The GP25's foundations, its chassis stiffness ratios, rear height adjuster geometry, and torque delivery map came from Bagnaia's 2023-324 evolution notes. Without him, Ducati doesn't reach this plateau. Yet now his fingerprints are being erased like inconvenient history. Matt Oxley's remark cut close to the truth. Gigi won't accept this, because in his world, the machine must validate the engineer, not the rider. When Bagnaia says we need to slow development, Gigi hears, you're wrong. Ego dressed as progress. And still, through it all, Pecco hasn't exploded publicly. No press conference meltdown, no blame game, just quiet endurance. That might be his final weapon. Because history loves comebacks born from humiliation. Think back, 2020, he was a laughingstock at Ducati. 2021, he became champion. 2022, people said Martin would dethrone him. He repeated. Maybe the pattern still holds. 2 steps into darkness, then 1 violent leap back to glory. But maybe not. Because this time, the enemy isn't another rider. It's a culture that prefers drama over devotion. If he stays, he'll need a machine tailored again to reason, not madness. If he leaves, teams like Aprilia or KTM will circle like wolves. He's too precise, too analytical to fade quietly. The paddock knows that when Pecco's environment stabilizes, his form detonates. And Ducati? They're learning the hard way that chasing lightning often burns the house down. Márquez brings headlines and points, yes, but he also brings distortion. He makes extraordinary look normal and normal look worthless. It's intoxicating and unsustainable. At some point, Ducati must decide, do they want a dynasty built on method or chaos disguised as genius? Because the day Pecco walks out, they lose their compass. The data will still stream, but the soul will be gone. Pecco Bagnaia rides with the number 63 again, no longer the number 1, because that plate sits on Jorge Martin's Aprilia. But numbers never defined him, they just told the timeline. What still burns beneath the helmet is that relentless precision that built Ducati's empire in the first place. He isn't finished. He's walking through the fire he once lit, and everyone's waiting to see if he melts. Maybe he's quietly reforging himself. Every champion needs an enemy. Sometimes the worst one wears your same colors. Next time you see that Scarlet 63 slicing through turn 3, don't mistake restraint for weakness. Bagnaia's fight isn't about lap time anymore. It's about environment. Talent will always find the place it deserves, and Pecco's talent belongs where data is truth, not politics. He needs a hierarchy that listens, not one that humiliates him in public briefings and contradicts him with someone else's telemetry. Give him engineers who hear, not dictate, and he'll rise again. Because he's not a malfunctioning rider, he's a silenced architect. The day Ducati remembers that will be the day they stop bleeding championships. From here, where does this put him? The time will tell us. Comment your truth, subscribe for more raw breakdowns, because this war inside red isn't over.